The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, TechBytes is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Welcome back to another episode of the TechBytes podcast, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and this week, I'm really excited to have an on-location conversation with Wade Allen, an old friend from a number of different places, so we're not going to lead with that, but we're going to talk about that. But welcome to TechBytes, and
Thanks.
Welcome to TechBytes.
It's great to be here. Appreciate
Here in
you guys
Atlanta.
having me on. Yeah, it's a beautiful morning in Atlanta.
It is. It is a beautiful morning in Atlanta. So we've known each other for quite a while, but actually not as long as probably I might think of years in the industry. But I understand that you didn't really start out in the restaurant industry. You started in the tech industry, right?
Yeah. I mean, crazy story is kind of pre or right around the college age when I was attending Brigham Young University in Utah. It was early, probably 1998. I started a website company and did web design, web development, HTML, JavaScript. And just during that internet bubble, there was so much energy and so much like cool stuff happening. The internet was kind of all the rage.
Did you go to school for programming or something?
No, actually, I was a classically trained marketer. Did my master's.
Wait, which year is this? This is 98, right?
So it would have been 98, 99, and 2000.
So that's a good time to do it because you didn't really have to be a programmer to get into that industry, but you sort of had to understand how you were going to go ahead and program, right?
The craziest thing about all of that was I picked up a book at Barnes & Noble and read HTML for Dummies. I could see this one coming, right? Okay. And so you picked that up. So you taught yourself. Yep.
Okay. And then you decided to go ahead and do different types of programming. But again, not necessarily in the industry, right?
That's right. I didn't do anything with restaurants. It was like home builders and dentists. And we landed a deal with another company that partnered with Novell BrainShare back in the day, if you remember Novell.
Of course.
Right.
They were a Utah company too, weren't they?
Yeah, Utah-based.
Yeah. Okay.
And then after a few years of doing that, we got into the event space of all things. We built some event technology with a company that allowed us to do check-ins at sessions and registration on laptops, which at the time was a huge deal.
Gee, you could have sold the Cvent.
Right, exactly.
You could have started out.
Exactly.
You could have built this thing and you could have gone over to Cvent because you had the idea maybe, well, I don't know what year Cvent got started, but that basically was a business that they built, but I think they actually didn't do it for event registration. I think that came later. They actually were building it to figure out how to connect and do RFPs for hotels and all the other things around it.
Yeah. The company that we actually became over time was called Wingate, and it sold to an events management
hotel company. By the way.
Oh, is it? I
So.
guess it is. Yeah.
It's a Wingate.
Yeah. This was a rock formation in southern Utah. They named it after, but they ended up selling to an events company. And then I went to graduate school and I studied marketing at Northwestern, my master's, and then kind of worked my way through a series of grocery.
Oh, okay. So here we go.
Places,
all right.
right?
So you're leading into it, so I don't even have to do this because you can just go ahead and just do this. So I was going to point out that you didn't actually start in the restaurant business.
Yeah, no.
So you're doing grocery. So you make the move from doing websites and all these other pieces, and I guess you then go to school. You're not still doing it while you're doing that, right?
Right. I was kind of doing it on the side, but once I went to Northwestern, I was done.
Okay.
I just did.
So then how do you end up in the retail business?
So I got into grocery, and then an agency in Dallas, agency in New York, but there was an office in Dallas, said, hey, why don't you come work for us and help us with our grocery client? So I make this transition. But of course, they don't just use me for grocery client. They start using me across the board, retail, movie theaters, restaurants, right? I start to kind of dabble in mobile and web technology across the board.
Well, Dallas was a good place to do it from. As long as you didn't do Blockbuster Video, you're in good shape, right?
We pitched them. It was an interesting story. I have to tell you that sometime. That one was, got kicked out of a boardroom after pitching some stuff at Blockbuster. But crazy story.
Maybe you were lucky.
I think we dodged a bullet for sure.
Although there are people who are in the restaurant business. There's a guy who went to work for Burger King, and he became the CIO at Burger King at one point, a long time ago. And then he went to Pizza Hut as a CIO. And he actually became CIO at Blockbuster.
Did he really?
He did a stint somehow in there. He was doing the Dallas thing after he left Miami. Mm-hmm. And he did this thing, and he ends up at a restaurant guy ending up Blockbuster.
Yeah, it's crazy how the restaurant industry just sucks you in, right? It really does. I did a little bit with it. I went to London and did some things. I came back with a startup and did some couponing, and I found my way back to restaurants. And eventually, in 2014, Wyman Roberts, who's the CEO of Brinker, and I had a connection. And there was this,
Was that like on Match.com or?
No, we actually shared an alma mater in Brigham Young University.
Match.com was found in Texas.
Yeah, I did. Actually, the
Mandy.
Yeah, yep, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So Wyman and I had a connection through Krista Gibson, who is the then CMO of Brinker. They pulled me over, and Wyman said, "Hey, I just need somebody to come over and help me figure out this like crazy digital."
So you made the shift from grocery over to restaurant.
Grocery agency, then restaurants.
Okay. So what year is this?
This was probably the years of 2006 to 2014, in that range.
So if we take a look at that period of time and you think about the retail industry, what you find out is that people in the restaurant industry always used to say during that period of time that technology was slow, where the spend was actually in grocery.
Yeah.
Because people were spending more money because they had all these lanes and you could buy a lot of point of sale. And also they were using AS400s and
old school IBM.
Nobody knows what this is, but they were using actual big servers because you needed that, but they spent a lot of money. But innovation did not come to the restaurant industry. Okay, so you're working for some great companies, the agency doing retail, and through your Match.com connection, you get to, I'll drop that.
Got that.
But okay, through your connection, you get to Brinker.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're brought into what role?
VP of Digital Marketing.
Okay, so what year?
So 2014.
Okay, so I got to tell you, my reaction to this is twofold. A, Brinker was doing something cool by actually bringing somebody in with that term in 2014. Because today we have digital transformation, we have chief digital officer. We're not sure whether the digital officer is the CIO or CTO. We don't know. But in 2014, if you think about digital, that actually is a little bit ahead of the curve for the restaurant industry, right?
It was.
Okay, so you're brought in to do digital. And so what are they asking
broad,
you to
right?
do? Is that like loyalty? I mean, if we think about digital in 2014, we're not even really talking, we may have online ordering, but we're certainly not doing delivery. You're in a casual market space and we think about the various brands. So what exactly is a digital person doing in 2014?
It wasn't digital advertising, which is what I thought a lot of people thought we were going to go do.
Did you think you were going to go do that?
That was the conversation I had with Wyman. It was like, you want a digital advertiser, you need to go hire an agency like Omnicom or WPP. If you want somebody to change your digital experience, add an online ordering component to your front end that's just, giving people a chance to order and then it just cues it at the restaurant.
Right.
Like, I'm going to really go make an impact. And so he was awesome. He just said, you got it. You got enough rope to be successful, but if you hang yourself with it, it's on you. So go get it done. So we went after the website. I think we were one of the very first companies to hire Olo and put them in as our back-end engine to run everything. In 2015 is when we did, or 2016 when we did that with Olo.
And you think about when Olo started, so they must really like you.
Yeah, Noah and I, we're pretty close. Noah's a good dude, right?
He's going to be here at this conference today.
We're going to connect.
He came in last night. So, okay. So they bring you in to go ahead and do this.
We clean up Google.
This is a nine-year journey at Brinker,
That's right.
So you start out coming in to go do this digital piece, and what's the trends? How does that move forward?
So the big milestones were fix the web, get the Google locations right, get the app built, put in an online ordering transaction engine, and then build a loyalty program. And that was a 4-year journey. And then we got to a place where Wyman's like, we need a CIO search because our CIO had been a former accountant. And I'm like, well, I'm not a CIO, right?
Well,
like, I'm a
we
digital
all know that technology reports to finance, right?
Right.
So sometimes people make this mistake of being the finance guy and they end up going over to be the CIO. But today, finance guys end up being CEOs. And well, we'll come back to this particular conversation. So, so go ahead.
So then the job role comes up. They do a couple of searches. They can't find the right guy. Wyman finally steps in and says, listen, you're going to go be the CIO. And I'm like, I'm not a CIO. He goes, you'll figure it out. You're a digital guy. You're a tech guy. You'll figure it out. So I said, okay. So I said, the only ask I have is that I can keep my digital title. So I can be chief digital officer and CIO. I still get a dabble on the digital side, but I'll go fix the IT side. So he said, okay, you got 2 years, figure it out.
So you take over the boring stuff of infrastructure and point of sale and everything else, right?
And I get breached 2 months into the job from a threat actor.
I remember that.
That sucked. I still have PTSD from it. But we got through it. We figured it out. I learned a ton. I mean,
because that really was your first time doing operational
Oh, yeah.
technology, what's going on in stores, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had no knowledge of POS
and it's
systems.
different. And also you're dealing with multi-brands, right? Because I do know the history of Brinker, and I look at some of the brands and also some of the creative minds that have gone all kinds of places, you know, there. And you never got to meet Norm Brinker, did you?
No, I didn't. And I've seen multiple pictures and videos.
Oh, he's great.
But yeah.
That was a great experience.
He's a good dude, I heard.
To get to know him early. There is one piece, by the way, before we sort of continue on the journey here, on the tech journey at Brinker, that a lot of people don't know. And I'm guessing you do know this, but I was at a reception last night. I was having a conversation with somebody who told me that they used to work for NCR, but they really started with Aloha, and they started with Aloha and when it was owned by Radiant.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't know.
Yep.
So do you know where I'm headed here?
I don't know where you're going,
This
but I
is
know
a
the story.
test.
I know the Radiant connection with Aloha.
Is there an Aloha connection to Brinker?
You know what? I've heard this story, but I didn't know if it was accurate, right? That the first POS system for that group actually came out of the code that was written on the Brinker side. But I don't know if that was really the case. Pankaj Patra likes to believe that, but I don't know if that was true necessarily.
That's a different story. He sits on our board, and that might be, you know, sort of a different story altogether if we had that conversation. But here's the story. So Aloha was actually started by a guy named Manny Negrero. And the company used to be called Ibertech, and then they changed their name to Aloha, but they were located in Dallas. And the reason why they were located in Dallas, which this like makes me old because I happen to know some history here, but people don't recognize Manny's name and they don't realize what an impact it was. So in the olden days, how Norm Brinker got his start is he was with Steak and Ale, and he was with Steak and Ale and Bennigan's. I believe he was under the food group, and that's how he got. And there are so many people that were mentored at either Brinker or through him and those that got these key positions. And Brinker was filled with executives that came there too. So they needed a POS system. So they hired a NASA engineer to go ahead and do it by the name of Manny Negrero. So he went ahead and created a point of sale for Brinker, for Steak and Ale and Bennigan's, which was prior to Brinker. And that's how it actually got started.
Wow.
And so it was Norm and it was these guys, and that's how they got started.
So that sounds like the true story. The messed up version of that was it was started at Brinker, but it sounds like it started at a Steak and Ale was where they actually came from.
It did. And I also know part of this because the first FS Tech, which was in like 96, I think it was, Aloha was one of the original people behind it when it was in the original days of Ibertech. And of course that was in Dallas. But it's just an interesting story about how technology starts within a company and what Brinker has done to bring technology forward, you know, and move it in so many different brands. Okay, so now continuing on with your journey. So,
so 2 years in that role, and I had really good, I'll call them lieutenants, you know, in Pankaj Patra, Nathan Hubert, Nicole Wolak, several of these individuals now that are, whether they're at Denny's or Cane's or still at Brinker, really, really good people that knew the space really well. So my leadership was more about, hey, how do we just make it make sense for the business?
Right, but you also built your own POS. If I remember correctly, didn't you build a POS or you migrated it over onto, it wasn't Suida. It was something like that.
So we had Aloha, but their order man it wasn't working. It just was a struggle.
Right, and so you took the code and I think you built something else, right?
So we went and got a group, a management consulting group that was really focused on tech, brought them in called Credera, and we said, listen, we want to do this on iPads because people think that Apple's intuitive. Can you build me an interface that allows this whole thing to function? And they did a phenomenal job. And we basically created a plugin that sat and spoke to that POS system that allowed our team members to use handhelds to order from the table.
Well, a lot of people feel they have to build their own technology that's in there, you know, and if you can use off the shelf, of course, that makes big sense. But when you're already into it, if you got franchisees or licensees, if you're doing globally, you know, it's sort of hard to adapt to a global infrastructure. And people like people like McDonald's, certainly do that as a global platform, but you have to be pretty big to have a global platform. Yeah. And then, put it around. But you also had full service operations, and then you're also doing all the other different pieces that are there, right?
Yeah, and for us, it was about getting an extensible tool to our operators that was easy. Because the POS was these big behemoth machines that sat on the side that they had to go and queue in front of. It just was painful. And so...
Right, but you shifted from CIO to...
I did. To kind of head of innovation and
head of innovation. So that's the fun job, right?
Yeah.
So that means that people throw technology at you. They want to give you samples and they want to test.
That's right. Yeah.
Because I always wanted to work. You've been to CES before?
Yeah, absolutely.
I always wanted. I bet walking CES for you with a badge that says head of innovation at Brinker probably got you a lot of free samples and in back rooms that I can't get into.
It did. It was also a mugging at times. Where it was just like, okay, guys, like I don't need everything. I just need some things. But that was a super fun job. I'm 2 years at CIO and then 2 years at innovation, head of innovation. That's where we created It's Just Wings. That's where we kind of tossed around drones. We were doing all sorts of really cool, innovative stuff that I think was way ahead of the market at the time. But yeah, that was a great role. Love that role. That was super fun.
Well, let's just take a break for a second, and then we'll go ahead and we'll continue on with this conversation. So we're getting in the innovation part. So we'll just hang on a few words and come back.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
Rob Grimes with TechBytes, that's powered by the IFBTA, and I'm here with Wade Allen, and we're hearing his story, so we're not going to we're not jumping to the end here, but where we left off before the break was we were talking about the role and transition to innovation. And so you're running innovation, you get to see some cool stuff. So just out of curiosity, was there some cool stuff that came out that you thought was really cool, you wish you had done, but it just never really happened?
Yeah, so, well, I did do it, but I just didn't go far enough, right? I am still hugely a fan, or I don't know if that's a word, I'm a huge fan of drones. I just think this aspect of delivery drones
about that. Okay, delivery drones
is amazing, and especially when it's copter-based technology. I do think AI, I didn't take it far enough with Brinker. And it was really in its infancy.
It was before its time.
It really was.
It was before its time.
You know,
the drones I get, but you also, can I like put a timeline here? If you're looking at the drones, you also had this little thing called COVID, which shifted your business in there. And now drones come up because before that, I don't think that Brinker was doing much delivery, right?
No, I mean, we had done a deal with DoorDash so that we had delivery going prior to the pandemic, like just months before. Right. We positioned it well, like we knew, but we didn't know, right? But we were just getting ahead of it. But we were doing, 5-7% of our business, not even that, was delivery.
Right. So now we have the shift, that goes on. Now you have delivery. You have to do the online. Now we're truly going digital, right? We're going customer-facing tech. Mm-hmm. So the drone thing, well, of course, where have they tested it the most? In Texas, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I get that. You got to go ahead and deliver that way. What is a drone? I don't actually really know because, is a drone in the future? Because I've been looking at future automobiles. I saw them at CES. I saw what was basically a motorcycle drone that a guy could sit on for the police in Dubai. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, now that can carry a bigger load. It's still got a person now who's actually taking it and delivering, but it doesn't have the limitations, right? And it can go up and down. So who knows? We don't know about drones yet, but they're still talking about it. But between that and autonomous vehicles, doing delivery. So,
I mean, you think of the most inefficient way to deliver food, a person driving a gas-powered car, driving on the street, stopping at stoplights, going through this whole process, right? So if you could just streamline that process without the human, kind of a streamlined lane or something, there's interest. And then it's line of sight to get the food as long as the payload's big enough.
Absolutely.
You start to get to a place where
Pizza worked out really well for, other types of quick service bay, if they can work on the holding times and things. But as a delivery piece, you're going to start to see the last mile, the lockers and things. I have this it would be fun to actually walk CES sometime with you, just to see what free stuff they give you, and then I can take advantage of it. But maybe they're not going to do it in your current role.
No,
so why don't we
president of a smaller brand?
Okay,
Right?
so now we're there. So here's an observation I would make.
Yeah.
So started to mention it before, but I didn't want to get to the punchline here, right? So we see finance people becoming CEOs and presidents of companies. Okay, very rarely do we see tech people doing that. Now, we see finance people who take over tech,
right,
and tech reports a lot of times, and sometimes the chief technology officer, digital, whatever it is, maybe reports to CEO directly, or they go through finance, right? But this is interesting because you are presently the CEO of a company.
Yeah, president of Costa Vida.
So Costa Vida, and which is about 80 units?
Yeah, we've got 93.
93. Oh, didn't mean to share. Okay.
It's all right.
So you're right in that upper level, small to medium business. Nobody knows how to actually define that. Some people go up to about 150 or so.
Right.
But you're right there. You're multi-state, not international, right?
Multi-country.
So how does an IT guy become, the CEO, of a restaurant company?
That's a great question. I've thought a lot about this.
You better think about this, because there's a bunch of IT people that want to hear this story that are probably trying to figure out, and how do I get that job?
Well, so the first thing I would say is the world is shifting. And the world is shifting because tech runs everything that we do, from our lives at home to our restaurant systems. When tech goes down, you go into a black hole. And any restaurant operator will tell you, my POS is down, I can't function. Well, you can take paper tickets. No, I can't function, my tech is down, right? So
people weren't trained to function. In the old days, they used to say you had to have that emergency kit, and it was like a cigar box, and you had a pencil, a pad, a calculator in there. And when I was a restaurant manager, if you lost your pilot light, you were out of business because you couldn't do the ovens. Today, you lose that connection, you are done. And people don't know how to exist without the prompts.
That's exactly right. So the generations now, as we progress forward, the internet is the backbone, just like electricity that functions.
Absolutely. So it's the air.
So it becomes the predecessor for success. So if you understand how restaurants and retail operates, and that tech is the backbone, and you understand the nuances that exist within technology in the business, your conversation in the boardroom is much more salient and important. So I've found my way to the table.
But they didn't originally bring you in as the president.
No, they didn't. They brought me in as the EVP of Strategic Growth, which oversaw marketing, IT, off-premise, and analytics.
And by the way, you would bring an IT guy in for that, because you would bring a innovation person in. A straight IT infrastructure person you wouldn't bring in. You'd bring in an innovation person because they realize that there's tech that's enabling everything.
That's right.
And as long as they don't believe that tech is the total answer here, and that it's really about the ops and you're okay. But by the way, I would point out that he did say something about retail in their restaurant, whatever. So he's bringing it, if you got the history here, how you get there. Okay, so you're in the boardroom and you realize where it fits.
Right, so you become, 80% of the conversation tends to be leaning back to the IT person who understands that infrastructure and know-how and knowledge. But that doesn't stop there. The challenge I'd give my IT counterparts is, you can't just know tech and call it a day. You have to learn the remaining part of the business. You got to partner with the COO. You have to get out into restaurants. You have to talk to the team members. You have to understand how the business operates. But that component can be learned. The IT component is a lot harder to learn. It's a lot more mindset, a mind shift of how you actually see the world. So if you come in with that knowledge, the extension to a CEO or a president is not that far, but you do have to be a student of the industry. And that's what I would tell people is, I worked really hard. I gravitated towards IT and marketing.
So do you understand operations?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how'd you get there?
I studied it. I paid attention. I went to restaurant. I partnered myself with the COO. And people don't know this, but my part-time jobs growing up were in restaurants, right? I did a whole bunch. I did a dishwasher.
Well, what percentage of the population has worked in the service industries or food and beverage, right? So including, many politicians, that are in this. So there's many different ways to look at that. But it's interesting. You're giving me a different perspective than I normally lead when I talk about my background. I say, hey, I'm just a restaurant manager who happens to be in tech. And my second half of that would have been quoting you word for word, except I would have said, it's easier to teach an operations person technology than a technology person operations. You said exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
You did say the opposite. So I'm now thinking about why is that? Well, it's because technology is used every day from kids who are 3 years old, get a tablet in front of them, and they're learning how to switch the pages and do things like that. So they're growing up with the tech. So the crossover between tech and operations, we should just make the assumption that somebody brings the technology with them and they already understand it from birth, long before they understand how to eat and go out to restaurants, but they may not, understand the operation. So you could be right that we have a shift.
Well, you hit it. Our generations, boomers and X's, had to learn tech. The generations that are now have come after us have not had to learn tech. They grew up with tech. So for us to go
intuitive.
Yeah. So for us to go from we know restaurants and we have to learn tech versus now it's we know tech, now we have to learn restaurants. And that's the shift now that's happening with the generation behind us.
But also what we have is an additional problem here, and then I do want to shift back to your current role, but we have an additional problem that we're losing connection with our employees, and the employees do not know how to communicate because, we watch how they communicate when they're with each other. And so one of the challenges we have is how do we take the technology that's embedded in them and get them to understand the culture of a company and then take that to customer service and take that to, how you interact with customers. And the solution, by the way, is not to do all customer-facing technology and take the employee out of it. And so this is a little bit of a challenge when you have people that are tech-enabled or it's embedded in them to teach them actually customer service.
Yeah, and I think the term hospitality is going to be very different in 10 or 15 years and 20 years than it is today, than it was 20 years ago, right? It's and I don't want to say it's watered down, but it's different, right? Hospitality 20 years ago was, it didn't have as much to do with tech. 20 years from now, hospitality may be, McDonald's has set up kiosks, right? I put kiosks on the table at Chili's. So hospitality is starting to kind of blur a little bit.
Thank you for saying that, by the way, because people don't understand what a kiosk is. They have a picture that it's the stand-up thing that, you go and you order from. There's in the lobby of this hotel, which you just gave the example in a McDonald's. But what is at tableside is also a kiosk.
Kiosk, absolutely.
And a lot of people don't look at it that way. And, they think it's something different, but it really is.
Yeah.
To some extent, your handheld terminal being used for online ordering is a kiosk. Same app, right? So, okay. So let's just shift gears a little bit. So you now are bringing your knowledge of innovation and helping to fuel now the growth of a 93 unit company in there. Do you have an IT person?
In the process of hiring one. We had one. He just
stepped
out.
So if you're listening, you're looking for a job, they're in the process of hiring. There may be something there. Okay, but you're looking to hire one.
Yeah.
I got to imagine that's going to be a tough position for somebody to take.
Yeah.
Because, have you actually thought about how you're going to interact with that person?
Yes, I have actually. I'm from a leading standpoint, I give people autonomy. That's how I've been successful. So this new VP will have the autonomy to run the IT department as they see fit, so long as it delivers on the goals that we have established. And so for me, whatever they want to take it, I'm open to that dialogue, right? I think that's what, Wyman Roberts, who is my kind of, I would say he huge mentor for me and one of my bosses in the past, gave me all the autonomy to bring in innovation and run tech the way I needed to run tech. So that's the approach I'm going to take, right? I have an opinion, but my opinion now is from the president's seat, not from the CIO seat. Okay.
So you have worked with the very large companies, and now you're working with a smaller growing company. Do you have franchisees?
We do.
Okay.
Yep.
So you have to work along that too, which in smaller organizations, a little bit difficult to mandate, which nobody likes that word, but to mandate technology.
Yeah.
Okay. In bigger organizations, you can make it part of the package and what it is that they're doing. So where do you see the differences of leading an organization of 93 units and growing versus being in an organization, how many?
1,300, 1,400.
Yeah, I mean, a big organization with big staff and everything, has that been a challenge for you, or is that a good thing?
It's both sides. It's a challenge because we don't have deep pockets. We don't roll our own technology. We don't force our partners to do what we want, right? But on the flip side, we work closer with our partners. One of the key things is because we don't have the deep pockets, we have to say, hey, this is what we have to do a little bit of weighting. We do a lot. We don't have our own staff of 120 people, offshore people rolling technology for us, right? We have to go and say, hey, we need your team to help us get there. But it also defers some of the liability. So when you build your own POS system, when you build your own handheld system,
well, you would never do that, right?
Never do that now. But in the past,
note the word now, right?
But it's a different time, right?
In the past, well, hey, look, everybody's got their thing. I try to avoid building any technology. I believe you can find what you want. And if you can't find what you want directly, then you go look at another industry that may do it.
Right.
And I did some drive-through stuff on this early on and looked at banking. Or you go to another part of the world where the technology may be. It just isn't here, right? So to date, for the most part, I haven't seen people have to build. Maybe the pizza guys, they got to build. But,
we try to stay away from, I always say rolling our own, but I try to stay away from
But I'm going to guess that you're sort of in a unique position because you know everybody in tech. You participate in a lot of different technology groups. RTN, you were very involved in that. You've been involved in a lot of technology things. So everybody in the industry, big and small, would know you because the role you also had with a major company, an enterprise player. So that would lead me to believe it puts you in an interesting position because you'd be a safe bet for somebody to test new technology with from the bigger players because they don't want to just roll it out to a really big player right away, but they need to have somebody who understands the whole process and how it's going to fit.
Yeah, you're right.
You could go ahead and leverage that and do some really forward things.
We have done some of that where people have come and said, listen, we know what the enterprise guys need. What does the small to mid-market need? 90 restaurants, 80 restaurants, 50 restaurants, how does that look? And so we've been approached a couple times and saying, yeah, let's see if we can put it in. In fact, we got a couple tests running right now, still kind of under the radar, but kind of putting them in the motion to say, hey, how would it work?
That?
No.
Okay.
I'll keep that under the radar right now.
But, back to the person you're going to hire.
Yeah.
So you hire IT people to maintain, or you can hire IT people to do strategy, and you can't, in a size like this, do both. So I'm going to guess that you may get an IT person who helps you to maintain and grow, but I bet you still dabble in the strategy.
So I've got a really solid core team that can maintain on our side.
Okay.
They do a great job of keeping systems running, functioning, making money, taking money faster, whatever term you want to use, right? They do a great job. The leader will be someone who will be more visionary and will say, okay, we're doing this today. Where's the market going? What should we be thinking about? They're also going to have to lead a sister brand, which is called Fat Cats, which is kind of think of it like a Dave & Buster's. Movies, arcades, bowling, right? And
that's a big deal.
It's a big deal because that industry is significantly behind where restaurants are today when it comes to all their different
that's very
systems.
interesting. One of our board members actually is with the Family Entertainment Centers, and he is part of that association, and they found their way into hotels because hotels have that. But when you're combining the technologies that are used, it's more like trying to do something like Disney or Universal, right? You've got to do the arcades, you got to do food and beverage. You may not have the rooms, but oh boy,
movies, and then I'm trying to use the same kind of
Is that a new concept you guys are building?
No, we've got 8.
Or you acquired?
Yeah, we built them. The same co-owners that started Costa Vida also started Fat Cats at a different venture, and so they've kind of grown over time over the last 15 years together now. Now we have a similar support center, and it's a really interesting ride now. There's a CEO on the Fat Cat side. I'm leading the Costa side. We meet weekly and discuss the things that are happening. We're going to use some of the similar platforms.
No, you might as well.
Yeah.
And you can, right? You can do a same core backbone. And so your growth plan is what?
For our restaurants, I'd love to do, right now we're going to surpass the century mark, the 100 mark in probably December, maybe January. And then our goal is to grow 10 to 15 on 100 base for the next 2 to 3 years. And then hopefully we'll get to, we'll start on a bigger march where we can get to 20 and 25 years.
We've covered a lot of different, subjects here, but I think the key points is, first of all, there's a future. There's a future for anybody in IT to become a CEO.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a really good thing.
Absolutely.
Now, and we've covered, though, that a history that started and an interest in Internet for Dummies. I don't think you said that. I think you said program or HTML for Dummies. For Dummies. I got that one, the Yellow Book. So please study the Yellow Book, right? Because it will get you to be the CEO of a restaurant company if you start out there.
That's right.
But you also brought to the table that retail background, which does have a lot of history, although I will tell you, retailers today are thinking that the restaurant industry is ahead of them, especially as they now look at drive-through and delivery and things like that. So that's good. And it's a very interesting story. We will have to walk CES together sometime.
Be great.
And you just got to make sure to remember me as they start handing you stuff. We can plot it out ahead of time.
We'll get matching badges that just say head of innovation. And we'll just
Okay. So we'll go figure that one out. But it's a great story, and we're going to look forward to your growth.
Awesome.
And really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I love it. It's been a blast.
We'll continue this conversation again, but I want to end with one thing. So, Costa Vida is Mexican.
Fresh Mexican, yeah.
Fresh Mexican. Let me just think about this for a moment. Chipotle, Starbucks. Chipotle. Okay. So, in your future, maybe something like Starbucks, because you can go make that leap from
I would say the drinks. I'll just say that drinks is not a far stretch for me to get to whether it's coffee or soda or something. I don't think
there you go. But I just want to point out that there is a future, and now other industries, because I don't know what Starbucks, if they consider themselves a retail or a restaurant company, it's a little bit of both. But what do? They tap the restaurant guys. That's right. And now we're tapping the IT guys, the IT people, to go ahead and take the leadership positions, in the restaurant operating companies. And I think you are actually paving the path and showing people the history of where they can go and how they get there. And I just think it's a great moment for anybody who's worked their way up through, IT and what the next step is. So we'll be looking to do that.
Rob, thanks, man. It's been awesome being here. I appreciate you highlighting that story. And I would say to anybody who's out there in IT, the world operates off of IT. So take the next step, learn the business, and you'll be well positioned to be president.
Learn the business.
Learn the business.
Right, because IT's not the end all there.
That's
right. Thank you for joining us. Right. So this podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of technology within food and beverage industries, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having with Wade today. So thank you for joining us on this episode of TechBytes, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to our next bite of technology together.